Good morning and welcome to another edition of Law Talks here on 4CRB. Well, over the past year, many Queensland communities have raised concerns about the increasing number of e-bikes and e-scooters on our roads, footpaths and shared pathways, particularly where they've been ridden by young people. Following a parliamentary inquiry into the safety of personal mobility devices, several recommendations have now been put forward to the Queensland Government. Beyond the safety debate, many parents and grandparents are also asking an important question. What happens if a child causes an accident while riding on these devices? Well, today we're taking a closer look at what the inquiry found, what changes may be on the horizon, and what families need to understand about their legal responsibilities. And joining us today is Attwood Marshall Lawyers Legal Practice Director, Jeff Garrett. Thanks for joining us, Jeff.
Good morning, Robyn. Thanks for having me.
Well, Jeff, what prompted the Queensland Government to launch the inquiry into e-bikes and e-scooter safety?
I think it was a combination of issues, but there was almost a public outcry in relation to accidents and the increase in numbers of kids riding around on roads, parks, pathways, etc., in very densely populated public areas. And there were several accidents. There have been a number of deaths. And I'm sure that anyone who goes to a public place, whether it be a park, a walking path, or anywhere near the beach, and that includes me, they will have dodged or had a close call with a young kid, usually, on an e-bike.
Yeah, well, Jeff, I've even seen footage of them roaring along through golf courses, so it's just mind-blowing. But the inquiry handed down several recommendations aimed at improving safety. While the government is still considering its response, what are some of the key proposals people should be aware of?
Yeah, there's a number of things, and most of them relate to regulation. So things like, minimum age restrictions, 16 years has been suggested, licensing requirements, and perhaps even, passing tests and things like that you would normally get with your vehicle license. Registration has been bandied about. Increased enforcement powers for the police, speed restrictions, area restrictions in relation to riding them, restrictions in relation to the size and power of the bikes, a whole raft of suggested things that the government is looking at.
Yeah, well, Jeff, some of those e-bikes, they're actually as powerful as a motorbike that does require age restrictions, registration, licensing and speed limits.
That's right, Robyn. And there are a number of e-bikes that are souped up, for want of a better word, or have had subsequent work done on them so that they go a lot faster even than some of the step-throughs and motorbikes that are on the roads. So it's pretty scary, young kids being in charge of those very fast, effectively motorbikes, when they're so young and relatively inexperienced.
And one of the issues getting attention is young teenagers riding high-powered e-bikes. If a child riding an e-bike or e-scooter causes an accident, can parents or guardians be held legally responsible?
Well, that's one of the issues that the government says that it's going to address in the new legislation and or regulations by saying that parents can be held responsible for the actions of their infant children. And by infants, I mean legally that means anyone that's not yet turned 18. Now, I'm not sure how they're going to approach that, because it's very difficult to sheet home liability for negligence to a parent. And it will be interesting to see what they come out with. But I'm guessing that they're probably going to aim at the ownership of the bike or who purchased it and perhaps go down that track. But look, there's a plethora of legal issues that arise from attempting to make a parent or any other third party liable for the actions of someone riding not just an e-bike, but any type of vehicle.
And Jeff, what kind of situations could potentially expose parents to legal liability?
Well, it all depends on the nature of the legislation and how it's framed up. But I suppose one way would be similar to existing CTP legislation, which says that the owner, the registered owner of a vehicle, can be held liable for damage that's suffered by a driver of that vehicle, even in circumstances where it's unregistered. So perhaps they'll go down that track. I'm not sure, but another angle would be that, let's say, a child hits someone, a pedestrian, in a public place and severely injures them, then it could be that they attempt to hold the parent or parents liable for any damage that's suffered by the injured person. And that could be significant if the injuries are severe. So again, I'm not sure how they're going to ram that home liability-wise to the parents, because we have such different family circumstances these days.
Yeah.
Parents are often separated. They have parents and step-parents, and some live with their grandparents. So I'm not sure how they're going to attack that, but it's certainly going to be an interesting legal conundrum to see how they go about it.
Yeah, watch this space. And if someone is injured in an accident involving an e-bike or an e-scooter, what legal options may be available to them?
Well, it depends on what side of the fence you're on. If you have been injured by a rider of an e-bike, then it really depends on the type of injuries you've suffered and whether it's worth bringing a claim, because the underage child who might be riding the e-bike obviously won't have any assets, perhaps apart from the e-bike itself, even if they don't own that. So this is why it's so difficult to try and work out how a parent would be responsible.
Yes.
But it's there's not a lot of options for you, unfortunately, if you are injured by a child on an e-bike. And perhaps if it's an e-scooter or it's hired from a company who is allowing children to take those e-scooters and ride them, you might have a cause of action there against the hire company. But most of the e-bikes that we're talking about here are privately owned or purchased, and are being ridden around by kids, well, on our roads, public areas, parks, paths, etc. So it's a difficult area for anyone injured by one of those to have any proper redress for compensation. And that's why one of the submissions that we made to the government was that rather than registering the bikes, which may be, very difficult, have a scheme in place where any injuries suffered by an e-bike rider are covered by the state's CTP insurance regime. And so at the moment that covers disability scooters and mobility scooters, for instance.
Yeah.
And they don't have to be registered, but they're covered under the CTP system. So if they injure someone in a shopping centre or wherever it is, and again, not as they don't go as fast as mobility scooters, but as e-scooters.
Yeah.
But if you get hit by one of those mobility scooters, they're quite heavy. They can cause injury.
Still cause an injury, yeah. And
If you
Jeff,
do and it's the fault, you would still have redress to compensation.
yeah, got you. Well, Jeff, we often think about injuries just happening to riders, but pedestrians can also be seriously hurt in these incidents. Are you seeing an increase in claims relating to these types of accidents?
Yes, we've had quite a few. We've had all sorts. We've had accidents with motor vehicles, kids on e-bikes. We've had pedestrians that have been hit by e-bikes. We've had e-bike riders that have been, hit by cars and motorbikes. There's a whole range of different scenarios there. And unfortunately, some of them, particularly where a pedestrian has been hit by an unregistered e-bike and a child riding it, don't really have a lot of options in relation to claiming compensation.
And finally, Jeff, while the government considers the inquiry's recommendations, what practical steps can families take right now to make sure young riders are using these devices safely and responsibly?
Yeah, good question. I think that one of the first things is, if they are considering buying their child a bike, to be really careful about the type of bike and how powerful it is and its size, and also to make sure that they are adequately trained and that they can look after the bike themselves. They obviously can't be beside them all the time, and mobility is one of the biggest things in our society now for young people. So, I think they've just got to do their best to try and ensure that they are using them properly and not causing dangerous situations in public areas.
Yeah, not just to themselves, but to others. Well, Jeff, that's all we have time for today on Law Talks, and it's clear that while e-bikes and e-scooters offer convenience and fun, they also come with real legal responsibilities, and many would agree that clearer rules and stronger safeguards can't come soon enough.
Very true, Robyn.
You've been listening to Law Talks here on 4CRB, which you can hear every Friday morning from 9 o'clock.